If I could go back to the day my father handed me the keys to the family business, I wouldn't walk away, I'd run. But you know how it is when you're 23, head full of daydreams, and your heart set on the wrong kind of boy. You think life is like those glossy perfume ads, romantic, thrilling, and scented with promises. Turns out, perfume fades faster than you expect, and responsibility has a way of smelling like stale coffee and late bills. I was sitting in Dad's old leather chair the day he called me into his office, his kingdom, as he liked to call it. The sun spilled through the blinds and stripes, and the air smelled like pine-scented cleaner and old paper. Dad never really changed the decor. There were still baseball trophies from his high school days on the shelves and a yellowing photo of him and Mom on their honeymoon in the Poconos. "Riley," he said, his voice gruff with emotion he rarely showed, "I'm ready to retire. And I want you to take over the shop." I nearly choked on my iced vanilla latte. "You're serious?" I asked, clutching my cup like it could anchor me. He smiled that worn-down smile of his. "I've never been more serious. Your brothers have their own lives. Your sister's a vet in Oregon. You're here. You've got the spark. You just need to grow into the fire." He said it like he was handing me a treasure, a legacy, something precious. And I, like the fool I was, nodded with tears in my eyes, promising I wouldn't let him down. The thing is, I did let him down. The shop, Dawson's Hardware, had been in our family for 3 generations. My grandpa built it after the war, with calloused hands and not much more than a handshake from the bank. Dad kept it alive through recessions and Walmart moving in across town. People trusted him. They came in not just for tools, but for advice on fixing a leaky faucet or a broken fence post. And then came me. I wasn't exactly the poster child for responsibility. My life at the time was mostly brunches with my friend Chelsea, scrolling through guys on dating apps, and daydreaming about the next spontaneous weekend trip with whomever I was infatuated with that month. The closest I'd come to hard work was waiting tables at a local bistro after college while I figured things out. I figured out that I liked men who made me laugh, wore cologne that cost more than my shoes, and sent me "you up" texts at 2 a.m. What I didn't figure out was inventory spreadsheets or ordering lumber from the right supplier. Still, I threw myself into it at first. I showed up every morning, mostly on time, wearing my best interpretation of casual boss mom jeans, a tucked-in tee, and lipstick in shades with names like Palo Santo Kiss or Weekend Affair. Customers humored me, mostly because they adored my dad. The older regulars called me Miss Riley and smiled kindly when I fumbled through the register. But the truth was, I didn't love it. I didn't feel like the boss. I felt like a kid playing dress-up in her dad's suit jacket, sleeves too long, pretending she knew what the hell she was doing. And when I met Shane, well, that's when everything started to shift. Shane was all dimples and leather jacket charm, a mechanic who'd recently opened his own garage down the road. He walked into the store looking for a socket wrench and left with my number. By the end of the week, I was skipping inventory checks to drink cold beers with him at Miller's Creek, his arms slung around my shoulder as we watched the sunset like we were starring in a country music video. He made me feel wild and seen and dangerous in the way that only bad decisions can. I started showing up late. Forgot to order the spring mulch bundles. Lost track of petty cash. But every time Dad called to check in, I'd smile and say, "Everything's great, Dad. Really? You'd be proud." And he believed me. God, that still stings. The first real sign of trouble was the missing power drill shipment. I remember it because old Mr. Clancy, who's been fixing up houses since before color TV, came in on a rainy Tuesday, slapping his receipt down on the counter like it was Exhibit A in a trial. Said it'd be in by Friday. "Riley," he muttered, water dripping off his tan windbreaker. That was 5 days ago. You know I've got folks waiting on a porch rebuild. I blinked at the paper, my heart thudding. I had ordered it. I was sure I had. Or maybe I'd meant to order it after that late-night drive with Shane. We'd taken his bike out to the lake and ended up watching the stars until almost dawn. I looked at the computer, praying it'd tell me I wasn't as reckless as I felt. No order logged. No tracking number. Just empty space where responsibility should have been. I must have made a mistake, I stammered. Let me call the distributor right now. But Mr. Clancy just shook his head. Tell your daddy next time he wants a vacation, he better stick around. Oof. That one hit like a slap. I smiled through it, the way you do when you're trying not to cry in public. But inside, my stomach churned. Still, I didn't tell Dad. Instead, I rushed the order, paid an extra fee to expedite it, and told Clancy some nonsense about a logistics issue. It wouldn't be the last time I used that phrase. In fact, logistics issue became my favorite cover for all kinds of things I was screwing up. And then there was Shane. It's funny how love, or what you think is love, can blur the edges of right and wrong. Shane was exciting in a way no Excel sheet could ever be. He'd show up at the shop around closing time, rev his engine loud enough to make the wind chimes on the porch rattle, and say something like, "Ready to blow this joint, boss lady?" And I'd be gone before the closed sign was flipped. We drank beers at the Overlook, made out in his garage, ate tacos at that sketchy food truck by the gas station. God, it was fun. Dangerous, giddy, stupid fun. But you can't run a business on fun. You can't pay invoices with flirtation. Bills started piling up. I stopped opening the mail. Chelsea noticed. She was my best friend since 7th grade, and the only one who didn't buy the whole "I've got it all under control" act. You okay? She asked one night over takeout. You've got that look. What look? That I'm pretending everything's fine while my world quietly burns behind me look. You had it senior year when you accidentally bleached your eyebrows. I laughed. That was in style, thank you very much. Chelsea wasn't amused. Riley, you can't keep faking it. It's not just your name on the door anymore. It's your whole family's history. I shrugged her off. I've got it. It's just a learning curve. But it wasn't a curve. It was a spiral. I missed a payroll cycle that month. One of the part-timers, Ben, quit without saying goodbye. Said he needed a real job. Another supplier put us on hold until we cleared a past-due invoice I didn't even know existed. And yet, I still couldn't bring myself to tell Dad. I'd call him on Sundays like always. He'd be on the porch with a cup of coffee, asking about the customers, the seasonal sales, the new signage he told me to update. And I'd say things like, business is picking up. You were right about the summer push. It was all a lie, of course. But he'd say, atta girl, and I'd feel warm for a second, then guilty for days. I started making little excuses to avoid talking to my siblings. Mom called a few times too, wanting to plan a family trip. I let it go to voicemail. What would I say? Hey guys, guess what? I turned Grandpa's legacy into a mess while making out with a mechanic behind the shelves of aisle 3. Nope. That wasn't going to fly. Shane didn't know much about the store. I didn't tell him. Not the real stuff. He thought it was cute that I ran it. Said it was hot to see me behind a register. I think part of him assumed I had some trust fund attached to it. Honestly, I was starting to hope the same. But one night, as we lay in his garage on a makeshift mattress, surrounded by engine parts and empty beer cans, he turned to me and said, "You ever think about just selling it? Taking the money and doing something else?" I blinked at him. Selling the shop? Yeah, he shrugged. I mean, you don't really love it, right? You love me. We could start something new. Open a bar. A boutique. Travel. You've got options, babe. I smiled at him, but something in my chest twisted. I didn't sleep much that night. Shane had already drifted off, one arm flopped across my waist, his breath soft and steady like someone who didn't have a single overdue invoice on his conscience. I stared at the ceiling of that greasy garage, watching the fluorescent light flicker and listening to the gentle click of a cooling engine. Selling the shop. The words circled my brain like a vulture. He'd said it so easily, like I was holding onto some yard sale antique and not a piece of my family's soul. But the worst part? I wasn't horrified. I was tempted. tempted to run. The next morning, I stopped by the shop early before anyone else showed up. I walked the aisles like I was seeing them for the first time, rusty nails in aisle 2, the pegboard wall that Dad installed himself, the paint swatches still organized by season. It all felt like a museum to someone else's life. When I got to the office, I sat down at Dad's desk, the same one he'd handed me the keys from, and stared at the stack of unopened envelopes. One was marked Final Notice in red. I opened it with shaking hands. Overdue utility bill. Again. The truth was, I was broke. Not in a fun, post-college, ramen-eating way. I was in sinking ship broke. The kind where you start wondering what you can sell without anyone noticing. And so I did. I sold off a few inventory items under the table, gave some discounts to cash-only customers, and pocketed the difference to keep the lights on. Told myself I'd pay it back when things evened out. Spoiler alert, things didn't even out. Chelsea came by that afternoon, holding a latte and a look that said she wasn't just here to gossip. "Hey," she said gently, "I passed your shop last night around 8. Why was the front light off?" My stomach dropped. I'd turned it off to save on the electric bill, but I couldn't tell her that. "Must have just blown out," I lied. "I'll fix it." She sat on the counter, crossed her arms. "Riley, come on. Talk to me." I gave her the shrug. You know, the one, half deflect, half collapse. "I'm just overwhelmed. It's harder than I thought it would be." Chelsea looked at me like she was trying to see past the pretty hair and lipstick. "Then tell your dad." "I can't." "Why not?" "Because," I paused, feeling the tears rise. "Because he believes in me. He gave me this gift, and I'm ruining it. I can't face the look he'd give me." Chelsea sighed. "You think he'd rather find out by accident? Or from someone else? You're his daughter, not a stock report. He loves you more than the business, Riley." But in my heart, I wasn't so sure anymore. It felt like the business was love in our family, a kind of currency I'd already spent too freely. Shane kept talking about dreams. About opening a little bar off Route 9 where we could serve wings and live music. He knew a guy who'd loan us startup cash. "You're too good for dusty old shelves," he said. "Let's build something ours." I wanted to believe him. So when he suggested I ask Dad for a temporary loan to reinvest in something new, I actually considered it. Not for long, but the thought was there. And that's when I knew I was in deeper than I wanted to admit. But then something happened. Dad showed up. It was a Thursday morning. I was late, again, and when I walked in, there he was, standing behind the counter, wearing his old green work shirt with the name patch, Frank, sewn over the chest. I froze. He turned, gave me that sideways smile of his. "Surprise. What are you doing here?" He looked around, eyes soft. "Just missed the place. Thought I'd help out for the day." My hands went cold, my mouth dry. Every bad invoice, every missing item, every whispered lie flashed through my mind like a horror reel. I wanted to cry, or vomit, maybe both. He clapped me on the shoulder. "Don't worry, I won't step on your toes. Just wanted to see the OL girl." But I saw the frown when he noticed the empty shelf where the power drills should have been. I saw the way he lingered on the dusty new arrivals sign that hadn't changed in weeks. Still, he didn't say anything. Not then. Later that day, I found him in the office, looking through the drawer where he kept the supplier files. He glanced up, expression unreadable. "Hey, Riles. Have you been having trouble with Martin's supply? Looks like they haven't been paid since March." I froze. "Oh," I said, too quickly. "There was a mix-up. I meant to call them. I'll take care of it." He nodded slowly. My heart was pounding so loud I could barely hear him say, "All right. Just making sure everything's okay." It wasn't. And I knew he knew it. That night, I couldn't eat. Dad had gone home after his visit, but the weight of his quiet questions lingered in the air like the smell of burnt toast. I sat in my tiny kitchen, pushing half-melted ice cubes around in a glass of watered-down soda, trying to imagine a version of the story where I came clean and he just understood. Spoiler: I couldn't. The next morning, I walked into the shop and found the second notice from the State Revenue Office tucked under the door. I stood there staring at the big bold letters. Tax delinquency warning. My stomach dropped like a roller coaster. I'd ignored the first letter, buried it under a pile of useless catalogs and old invoices, hoping it would somehow vanish. Guess what? It didn't. My hands shook as I locked the door behind me. The shop was quiet in that eerie early morning way. No customers yet, just the hum of the old fridge in the break room and the faint creak of the vents. I sat down at the register and pressed my palms to my face. I'd let things go too far. The worst part was, I still hadn't told anyone. Not Dad, not Chelsea, not even Shane. I'd been lying by omission, so long it started to feel like breathing, automatic, necessary, invisible. Chelsea showed up around noon with sandwiches and a side-eye sharper than cheddar. You look like you haven't slept. I haven't, I said, biting into a pickle and nearly choking on my anxiety. She watched me chew. What's going on? You've been off for weeks. I don't know what you're talking about, I lied again, badly. Oh, come on, Riley. Her voice snapped like a twig. You think I haven't noticed the customers dropping off? The shelves that haven't been restocked since spring? Or the fact that you've been dodging questions like a politician in a scandal? I tried to laugh it off, but it came out sounding more like a whimper. Chelsea leaned in. I love you. But you're in trouble. You have to tell your dad. No. Riley. I can't, Chelsea. If he knew. I don't know what he'd do. Be disappointed? Angry? He gave me everything, and I broke off. The tears came fast, hot, and mortifying. Chelsea handed me a napkin. You're human, Riles. People mess up. But covering it up? That's not just messing up, that's digging your own grave. I wiped my eyes. It's already dug. That night, I went to Shane's. He could always distract me, smooth over my fear with a well-placed kiss and a cold beer. But even he noticed something different. You're quiet, he said, his hand tracing circles on my knee. Just tired. You sure? He asked, then leaned in, that devil-may-care smirk playing at his lips. 'Cause I was thinking, maybe it's time we really do this thing. You and me. That bar I talked about? My buddy knows a guy who can draw up a business plan. But we need startup cash. I stiffened. Shane. What? He said innocently. You got a whole store under your name. Property like that in a town like this? We could sell it and never look back. I sat up, suddenly cold all over. It's not just property. It's my family's. That place is my dad's entire life. Yeah, but now it's yours. He gave it to you. He pulled a beer from the fridge. You can do whatever you want. He didn't get it. He never had. I left early that night, walking home under the too bright glow of the streetlights, my head pounding with questions I didn't want answers to. When I got home, the voicemail light on my phone was blinking. It was Dad. Hey kiddo, his voice came through, gentle and tired. Just wanted to say I'm proud of you. Stopped by the shop yesterday. I know it's not easy. Took me years to get the hang of things. Don't be too hard on yourself, all right? I burst into tears. He didn't know. Not yet. And maybe he never would. But that message, that voice, haunted me. I sat there on the floor of my apartment, phone to my ear, listening to his words over and over again like a confession I couldn't give. I wanted to tell him, but I didn't. Instead, I opened my laptop and Googled how to sell a small business discreetly. I swear, the internet has a rabbit hole for every kind of desperation. How to sell a small-town business fast. Asset liquidation without alerting family. Exit strategy after financial mismanagement. I sat on my couch, those tabs lined up across my screen like confessions in a courtroom. Every click felt like a betrayal, not just of Dad, but of the little girl who used to sit behind the counter with her juice box, pretending to help customers while Dad handled the real work. I missed her. She'd be ashamed of me now. But I was in too deep, and shame wasn't going to pay off the debt. I needed a way out. Quiet, fast, and clean. So I emailed a broker. Her name was Lynn. Sounded chipper and efficient, the kind of woman who wore blazer dresses and typed faster than her shadow. I told her I was exploring options and possibly considering a sale, vague enough to still lie to myself. She emailed back within the hour. Let's talk. First call is free. God help me, I scheduled it. Meanwhile, the shop started thinning out, like a forest losing its trees one by one. Customers still came in, but not with the same warmth. They didn't linger. They didn't chat. The shelves were bare in places, the lighting a little dimmer. You don't realize how quickly people notice when things start slipping. Mr. Clancy stopped coming altogether. Then our lawn care guy, Marco, asked if I was okay. I lied and said I had the flu. But I think the worst moment was when Mrs. Dalton, who's known my family for 2 decades, patted my hand at the register and said, "We miss your daddy's touch around here." I smiled. It cracked. The phone call with Lynn was scheduled for Wednesday. I took it from my car, parked in the back lot behind the old post office, so no one I knew would see me. She was friendly, sharp, and quick. Asked all the right questions: property value, assets, debt, revenue, customer base. I danced around the ugly truths like a clumsy ballerina, trying to make everything sound fixable. So, she said, typing loudly, "What's your ideal timeline?" And I said it. The thing I wasn't supposed to say. Soon. Like, really soon. She didn't flinch. Discreet sale is doable. Just know that the more urgent it is, the lower the return will be. That's fine, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. It wasn't fine. Shane was thrilled when I told him I was moving forward with the plan. He cracked open 2 beers and pulled me into his lap like we were Bonnie and Clyde planning a new heist. "See?" he grinned. "Told you we'd find our ticket out." He had dreams, I'll give him that. Big ones. We'd live out of a van, start a mobile bar, travel up the coast, post moody photos on Instagram, be one of those couples people envy online, but secretly wonder how the hell they pay for gas. I wanted to want that life. But every time he kissed me, I felt like I was erasing something sacred. One night, while Shane went to get pizza, I snooped through his glove box. I don't know why. Maybe just instinct. Maybe because a small part of me had started to wonder if he was in love with the dream more than with me. I found an envelope with my name on it. Inside, a printed flyer mock-up. Riley and Shane's Roadhouse, coming soon. My stomach flipped. He'd already printed promotional materials. He was already planning our future, using a name that wasn't really mine anymore. I folded the flyer and slipped it into my jacket pocket. Said nothing. Lynn moved fast. She found an interested party, a regional home improvement chain that wanted a charming, historic storefront presence in the Midwest. It was corporate speak for. They'd gut it and replace my family story with a prefab sign and new uniforms. They made an offer. Not amazing, but enough to cover the debts, clear the slate, and have a small chunk left for the next chapter. I didn't sign it. Not yet. Dad called that weekend, inviting me over for burgers. Said he and Mom missed me. I went. We sat out on the deck, just like old times. Fireflies blinking around the yard. The grill sizzling. My mom wearing that old apron with the cow on it that she swore she'd toss, but never did. "You doing all right, Riles?" Dad asked between bites. "Yeah," I said, chewing slow. "Just growing pains." He chuckled. Lord knows I had those. I remember one time I forgot to pay the insurance on the shop and only realized when the guy showed up to cancel the policy. I blinked. "You never told me that." He shrugged. Didn't seem important once it was fixed. Mistakes happen, sweetheart. It's how you handle them that matters. That stuck to me like gum on a shoe. Because I wasn't handling it. I was running. Lying. Selling the very thing he'd built with his bare hands. And he had no idea. I didn't sleep the night after the barbecue. It wasn't just the guilt anymore. It was grief. Grief for a shop that wasn't even gone yet, for a dream I never wanted, and a version of myself that had been slowly vanishing behind a bright smile and 100 white lies. The next morning, I found myself parked outside Dawson's Hardware an hour before opening. I sat there, engine off, radio silent, just staring at the peeling red letters on the front window. Established 1971. That date had always felt distant, like a family myth. Now it felt like a countdown. Inside, the shop smelled like dust and old wood. Familiar. Like Dad's hug. I walked the aisles, running my fingers along the edge of the checkout counter, the rows of paint cans, the empty hooks where our best-selling socket sets used to hang. Everything felt smaller. Or maybe I'd grown in the wrong direction. Lynn had sent the final paperwork. The offer. The signatures. It was all real now. The email sat in my inbox like a lit fuse. I opened it, scrolled through. Read the words like I was reading the back of a medicine bottle I already knew was going to make me sick. And I signed it. Digitally. Coldly. In silence. I didn't cry. Not yet. But my hands shook so bad I dropped my phone afterward and had to sit down behind the counter just to breathe. It was done. I had sold my father's legacy to a faceless chain called Build Smart. I didn't tell him. That's the part that still eats at me. I went over for Sunday dinner like always. Ate mashed potatoes with extra butter and told Mom how good her gravy was. Dad talked about the high school baseball team, about the new traffic light they were installing on Main. I smiled. Laughed. I was a ghost in my own life. At one point, Dad leaned across the table and said, "Your grandpa would be proud of you. I hope you know that." My throat closed up like a fist. Shane was ecstatic. He wanted to toast. Took me to a bar out by the county line, neon signs, sticky floors, jukebox playing old Tom Petty. To the next chapter, he grinned, lifting his glass. I clinked mine half-heartedly. The sound was hollow. He talked about the van we'd buy, the cities we'd see, the life we'd start. No more stress, he said. You'll be free. But I didn't feel free. I felt like a thief. He kissed me outside the bar, and for the first time, I felt nothing. Just cold. The next day, Lynn called. "Congratulations," she chirped. "It's official. Build Smart will begin transfer of inventory by the end of the month. You've got a 2-week grace period to clear out personal effects." Personal effects. Like my family's name. Like the Woodburn R my grandpa carved and nailed above the back office door. Like the chalkboard that still had fall specials, written in Dad's handwriting, the S all curvy and crooked like it always was. I hung up and sat in the break room alone. Then I cried. I mean really cried. Ugly, snotty, silent sobs that came from the pit of my stomach. I had done it. I had burned the bridge, packed the matches, and now I was just waiting for the smoke to reach the sky. That night, I opened my journal for the first time in months. Just one sentence spilled out. "You said you wouldn't let him down." I knew I had to tell him. But I also knew I wouldn't do it face to face. I started writing a letter. "Dear Dad," I began, and immediately hated it. Too stiff. Too cold. So I tried again. "Hey Dad, I need to tell you something." I wish I could say it out loud, but I can't look you in the eye and say the words I've been choking on for months. I worked on it until nearly dawn, rewriting, erasing, rewriting again. I must have filled 5 pages before settling on one that didn't sound like a stranger wrote it. I folded it neatly, put it in an envelope, and left it in his mailbox. Then I drove. I didn't even tell Chelsea. I just packed a bag, grabbed the cash from the sale, and drove towards Shane's garage with the kind of dread you only get when you know you've won, but lost the wrong thing. He was waiting, bag already packed, smiling like the world was his. "You ready, babe?" I nodded. But inside? I was already gone. It was 2 days after I left town when Dad called. I didn't answer. We were somewhere on the outskirts of Louisville, Shane's playlist on shuffle, and the van smelled like gasoline and pizza boxes. I stared out the window, Phone buzzing in my lap like it had a pulse. 3 missed calls. Then one from Mom. I knew why they were calling. The letter had landed. I'd driven 12 hours just to avoid the sound of my father's voice when he found out what I'd done. I couldn't bear it. That quiet disappointment. That deep, bone-heavy silence that feels worse than yelling. I finally listened to his voicemail that night, sitting on the floor of a sketchy motel room with a broken AC. Hey, Riles, his voice cracked halfway through. I got your letter. Silence. I wish you'd told me sooner. I could have helped. That's what parents do, you know? We help. Another pause. He sighed like the weight of me had gotten heavier. I don't understand why you didn't trust me. I cried. Quietly. So Shane wouldn't hear. He kept talking. You didn't just sell a store, Riley. You sold something that was ours. Not mine. Not yours. Ours. Then the click. Message over. No yelling. No blame. Just heartbreak, plain and heavy. The next few days were a blur of cheap motels, empty highways, and Shane's dreams painted across the windshield like some wild mural I couldn't connect to. He kept saying things like fresh start and no regrets, but I had more regrets than pairs of underwear in my suitcase. The deeper we drove, the more I felt like I was dissolving. I missed the coffee pot at the shop that always leaked. I missed the bell over the door that chimed too loud. I missed Dad's morning calls and the little notes he used to leave in the office, like call Martin back or take a break, kiddo. And most of all, I missed myself. Not the version that sold the shop. The one before that. The one who believed she could make it work. On day 6, Shane pulled into a dusty roadside lot with a big red barn-shaped building that said, "Now leasing, Roadhouse Opportunity." He turned to me, grinning. This is it. It looked like someone's half-abandoned wedding venue. There was a faded sign, still attached to the side, Billy's Boot Barn, and a smashed jukebox leaning against the wall. Shane jumped out like a kid on Christmas. I sat still. Something in me had snapped. Or maybe it had simply gone quiet. He popped his head in through the driver's side. You coming? I shook my head. I can't. What? I looked at him, really looked at him, for maybe the first time without the fog of infatuation. He was handsome, charming, ambitious in a chaotic, rootless way. But he didn't see me. Not really. I need to go home. Shane stared like I'd just spoken in Morse code. Home? What the hell are you talking about? You sold it. You're free. No, I said, voice steady now. I ran. And there's a difference. He blinked. You're serious. I nodded. And then, finally, I said the thing that had been simmering in my chest like a slow-cooked truth. You were never the dream, Shane. You were just the distraction. He scoffed. So that's it? After everything? I nodded again, softer this time. Yeah, that's it. I grabbed my bag from the back seat, tossed his flyer back in, and walked away. No dramatic music. No chase. Just the sound of gravel under my sneakers and the long breath of a girl finally choosing herself. I called Chelsea from a bus station the next morning. She didn't yell. Didn't even say I told you so. She just asked where I was and what flavored donut I wanted when she picked me up. When I got back to town, Dawson's hardware was already stripped bare. A new banner hung across the front. Build smart. Grand opening. And I swear, it looked like a funeral in fluorescent lighting. I stood across the street and just watched for a while. The windows gleamed, the shelves were stocked, but the heart was gone. My grandpa's initials had been scrubbed off the back door. The wooden R was gone. I could feel it, the loss, like it lived inside my ribs. But this time, I didn't run. I pulled out my phone and texted Dad. I'm home. Can I come over? The reply came a minute later. Doors open. The porch steps creaked the same way they always did. I stood there for a second, hand on the railing, feeling the weight of the summer heat and 6 months' worth of regret pressing down on my shoulders. I half hoped he wouldn't open the door. That I'd knock and no one would answer, and I could go home and say, well, I tried, and crawl back into my shame cocoon. But the door opened before I even knocked. Dad was standing there in his plaid shirt and scuffed-up slippers, like it was just another Sunday afternoon. And I burst into tears. He didn't say anything, just pulled me into one of those dad hugs, tight, warm, safe, the kind that says you're still my kid, even when you mess up royally. I didn't realize how badly I needed that until it happened. He led me inside. Mom was in the kitchen, pretending not to have been peeking through the window. She gave me that I'm furious and I love you look only mothers can manage. I got a kiss on the forehead and a plate of cinnamon rolls shoved into my hands. You look thin, she muttered. I think that's just the guilt. They both laughed. It broke the ice. We sat at the table for hours. I told them everything. I didn't sugarcoat it. I didn't try to spin the story in my favor. I told the truth, the messy, selfish, painful truth. About the lies, the debt, Shane, the van, the fake future I tried to build on the bones of something real. Dad listened. Quietly. Every now and then he'd rub his jaw or sigh, but he didn't interrupt. When I finished, I stared down at my coffee cup, cheeks burning. I'm sorry, I whispered. I thought I was ready. I wasn't. And I didn't know how to ask for help. Dad sat back in his chair. You should have told me the minute it started to slip. I know. You sold it without even asking. I know. But, he added, after a long pause, you came back. I looked up, surprised. That means something. I don't deserve for it to mean anything. Maybe not. But life ain't about what we deserve. It's about what we do next. The next few weeks were slow, like the thaw after a long freeze. People in town gave me looks, some curious, some kind, some not so much. I couldn't walk past Build Smart without my stomach turning, but I made myself do it anyway. Like penance. Like facing the mirror. Chelsea stuck by me because of course she did. You're a mess, but you're my mess, she said, handing me a job application for the local co-op. Manual labor? I asked. Yeah, you'll survive. Might even like it. And I did. Not right away, but eventually. There was something healing about stocking shelves and sweeping floors and working without the crushing weight of a legacy I wasn't ready to carry. One morning, months later, Dad and I were driving past the old shop. He nodded at the window display, sleek and corporate and soulless. Doesn't feel the same, huh? No, I said. It doesn't. I was thinking, he said slowly. Your grandpa had a workshop out back. Behind the garage. Yeah? Needs fixing up. Roof's shot. No real plumbing. But it's still ours. I turned to look at him. You want to start another business? He shrugged. Not me. But maybe we could. You and me. Something small. Slow. Just to see. I smiled. Not because it fixed everything. But because he said we. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like a failure. I felt like a seed that maybe, just maybe, had a second chance to grow. I never told him everything, like how close I came to disappearing for good. Or how I almost let a man with good cheekbones talk me out of my entire life. But some things don't need to be said. He knew. He knew I broke it. But he also knew I was here to rebuild. Together. And that's something you don't get from a grand opening sign or a slick new floor. That's called starting over. And for the first time since the keys landed in my hand, I felt like I just might be ready.